This yin yoga practice will start off with a little bit of breath work and then a wide-legged child's pose with twists, dragon poses, square poses, and then we'll end with a supported bridge pose that I call Milky Way Pose. The theme of class today is called the three attitudes, which looks at how we think. So yoga itself is not just about the physical being, but about our whole being. That includes our minds and our emotions. So some useful props today. Definitely need to create some height, particularly for the supported bridge pose. So maybe have some books handy, and then always a few blankets, a few pillows, always useful. And we'll get started. The practice starts with a little bit of breath work, so find a comfortable seat. It can be cross-legged if that's comfortable. Otherwise, find your own comfortable seat. Give yourself permission to find that seat. You can sit on a little bit of height. You can place padding underneath one or both knees if you need to. Take a little time to root down. Feel the connection points between your lower body and whatever you're sitting on, whether it's the floor, or yoga mat, or some props. Grow up tall through your spine to bring your spine back to neutral. Roll your shoulders up and back, and then let them sink and soften. Crown of your head is trying to lift up towards the ceiling. Maybe that means the back of the neck has to be long. Soften your face, your jaw, your eyes. And then just notice your inhales and your exhales. Next couple of breaths here. So we'll practice what's known as third eye opening here. And it starts out with hands at heart center. So you take one hand, cover your heart, take the other hand, gently place it over the top of the first heart hand. And from here, adopt an attitude of affirmation. In other words, affirmation just simply means to accept and allow what is going on in the present moment. Accept and allow how you're doing your practice, and let it be okay. Let it be fine here. So on your next inhale, bring your hands forward and bring them back, and then place your fingers on your third eye. Your third eye is a space in between your eyes here. This is the site of your Agnya chakra, your site of your intellect and your intuition. As you continue to inhale, expand your hands up towards the sky, and then as you exhale, a big slow sweeping circle back to cover your heart at the end of the exhale. So we'll do this 5 more times. So inhale, again, third eye up to the universe. Exhale, hands slowly swoop back to heart center. 4 cycles here. So inhale, touch the third eye, exhale, expand out, and then hands to heart center. Inhale, exhale, and 2 more rounds here. So inhale, touch the third eye, touch your intellect, exhale, hands back to heart center, and then 1 final round here. So third eye, exhale, and then bring them back, heart centered. And then just pause for a moment. Maybe re-soften your jaw, re-soften your face here. And then we'll get ready for the first long-held yin posture. The first long-held yin posture is a wide-legged child's pose with a twist here. So at some point, come onto hands and knees. Come to table pose, and then bring your knees about mat width apart. They can go wider if you want to. Feet are coming together as close as they can come to be comfortable here. And then sink your hips back towards your heels as far as they go until they stop for you. Lower your torso forward nice and long, but extend your arms forward. Plant your hands on the ground about shoulder width apart here. So this is where the posture starts. And from here we'll add a twist. So root through the right hand and sweep the left arm all the way up towards the ceiling to open up through the upper torso here. And then it's going to come all the way back down and weave it in between the right arm and the right knee. And you'll lower this left shoulder down onto the ground as much as you can here. So this is basically the posture here. There's little variations that you can do. So decide what you might need in this posture. Maybe you need a prop, maybe you need a blanket or a pillow underneath your head, or this arm here. Some variations you can do with this right arm is you can extend the right arm forward. You can just keep the right hand where it is. Or you can bring the whole right arm and wrap it around the back side of your torso, just to open up more through that right shoulder, if you wish. Take some time to see how this posture feels. And if it's not feeling very well, then maybe make some modifications here, because we'll stay here. I'm going to stay here for a few minutes or so in this posture. And then when we get done with this posture, we have the other side of this posture to do. So I'll go through the three principles of a yin yoga practice. The first principle is called finding your edge. And everything about that statement is important. You need to find, which is an investigation, an exploration. You need to find your, and that's specific to your unique body here. You need to find your edge. You need to find the edge, and that's the place where you're feeling some pressure somewhere that feels appropriate. Injury, trauma, harm, usually not appropriate. All you're doing is injuring something. So if you're feeling that, then you're not at your edge. You need to back off here. And we can apply the three attitudes, which I alluded to in the introduction, to a simple yoga practice. We can also apply them to the grand philosophy of the universe, if you will. And so you might have to go through all three when you're finding your edge here, when you're finding the appropriate shape, someplace where your body stops and where you start to feel sensation. Second principle is called stillness. Once you've found the appropriate shape to take where you're feeling traction, then you try to stay for a while. This takes fortitude, this takes patience, mainly patience here, to decide to not jump in and out of the posture or to fidget. Now there can be a lot of adjustment going on. You can move your head, your arms, your limbs around to kind of find a more accessible shape in a posture. If you don't feel anything and you want to go deeper, you can move deeper into a posture. If you're feeling too much and you need to move less deep or come out of a posture, you can do that too. So those are all part of the exceptions to the stillness rule. And then finally, the third principle is time. Time is what does the work in yin yoga. Time ultimately is what makes yin yoga. Yin is spending the time with the muscles soft, the breath soft, so that the traction can begin to kind of manifest itself and reside in the more plastic tissues, the connective tissues, which collectively are known as yin tissues here. So just a couple more breaths here. Now if you have your right arm behind your torso, you're going to start bringing it back around. You're going to use that right hand and that right arm to help slowly push yourself up and out of the posture. You can release the left arm, maybe bring it back up towards the ceiling, and then bring the left arm back down. Maybe come up, if you have a lot of tension and traction in your shoulders, you can kind of work that traction and tension out here. Maybe slowly come up to tabletop. Work out the kinks in your feet. We're going right back into wide-legged child's pose here. So if the flexion of the knees and the hips and the ankles was pretty uncomfortable, then maybe work that out. By the way, if you noticed you got really uncomfortable pressure points underneath your ankles and knees, then maybe it means you need to put more padding underneath those places here. So we'll set up for the other side of this wide-kneed child's pose with twist here. So once again, hands and knees, Feet close together, knees as wide as they can comfortably go. Sink your hips back towards your heels. And then lower your torso about halfway. So extend your arms out, shoulder width apart, arms lengthened here. And now it's the right shoulder. So root through the left hand and the left arm. Sweep the right arm up towards the ceiling and bring the right hand back down. Weave it in between the left arm and the left knee. And then lower yourself down onto that right shoulder. And you can press into the ground with this left hand to kind of increase the twist as much as you want to here. And then decide what you'd like to do with this left arm. It can be around behind your torso. You can maybe even kind of find a bind with that right thigh. Or it can just stay right here, right alongside you here. And then we'll stay for another 3 minutes or so. Decide if you need props. So maybe you want some cushioning underneath your legs, maybe underneath your torso, maybe underneath your head or your arm here. And then just settle in for this side here. And you can always decide to do this twist. Maybe you don't like the wide-legged child's pose. Maybe it's too much of a painful hip opener. You can always just come back up to table. Do the shoulder twist with knees underneath your hips here. Or maybe you don't like this twist so much. Maybe this is painful. In which case, you can always just do regular child's pose here for a while. Arms out in front and just soften back into the light hip opener here. So these are all options to consider in these yin yoga practices here as we reside here for a fairly lengthy amount of time here. So at some point you do want to kind of just get settled in and just kind of stay a while here. And here, by here I mean maybe another minute or so of just quiet. Notice your breath. Check in with your sensations. So in yin, we're not so interested by what it looks like. We're not interested in the external shape. We're more interested in the internal sensations and feelings that this is developing, and specifically in this physical practice. We're interested in the sensations of traction, of pressure, of stuckness, whatever your word for it is. And so that's what we're using to kind of guide ourselves into these postures. And when it's enough, and by enough I mean we're feeling something that it doesn't have to be pleasant. It just has to be not injurious here. We decide to stay. We decide to create the patience to stay here. And we can watch, metaphorically speaking, we can watch how those sensations change or not change. We can watch how our breath is responding to the posture. We can watch our brains, we can watch our own thoughts. And just notice what kind of colors, what kind of flavors our thoughts take, what kind of attitudes they adopt. Indeed, we'll talk about some of the basic attitudes that underlies our thoughts, which basically colors our philosophy about life and about existence here. So just one more breath here. If you have that left arm behind you, bring it back around, plant the left hand on the floor, use the muscles in the left arm to slowly push your torso up, rather than your torso doing the work. Oh, the right arm probably wants to be released, so release the right arm, shake it out a little bit. And from here, make your way onto your belly, legs comfortably extended up behind you. We'll do a little bit of yang counter work after those long-held twists and hip openers. So come onto your belly and bring your legs together so that your big toes touch. Extend your arms out alongside your torso. We'll do a few locust cycling here poses. So head is on the floor, Hips are kind of rooted, getting kind of nice and comfortable here on the floor. And then really root through the front of your hips, your pelvic bone. Slowly tone through the backs of your legs so the tops of your feet are really pressing into the ground. Maybe your kneecaps actually lift up here. So this is a little bit of a yawn counter pose here. Lift your shoulders up, and then on an inhale, use the muscles just in the back of your torso to lift your heart up, or try to lift your heart up off the floor, however far it goes here. And then exhale and slowly lower yourself back down to the ground. Maybe take a resting breath here. And then on your next inhale, inhale and lift the whole thing up again. Just as high as you go, just using the muscles in your torso. And for some of us, maybe we don't go anywhere, and that's fine. You're just trying to activate the core muscles in the back of your torso. Lower your torso back down, soften a few resting breaths here. We'll try one more time, and for those of you who need a little bit more oomph, inhale, lift your torso up, maybe lift your arms up a little bit, and if you want to, you can even lift your legs up a little bit into full locust, flying locust pose here. Just stay for a breath and then lower yourself all the way back down onto the ground. Rest here for a moment, and then when you're ready, plant your hands, use your arms to slowly bring yourself back up. Come to hands and knees. And then the next yin posture is dragon pose. So from hands and knees, you'll bring that left foot forward in between your hands. Maybe inch the right knee back. So you're coming into a low lunge. This is where you may need some props. If that back knee and that back ankle is in pain or they're in protesting, take some padding, such as a blanket or a pillow. Place it underneath that back knee. If your hands don't reach the ground here, then maybe take some height. You can always take a book, place it underneath your hands to create enough height that you can actually root your hands into the ground here. And this is what's known as basic dragon here. So this is the pose. So once you find your version of it, by the way, you can move this front leg around if you need to. Once you find your version of it, this is where we're going to stay for a while. If this is really painful, then the option for dragon is what's called upside down dragon. And so for upside down dragon, you basically bring yourself out of dragon. Make your way onto your back. Extend the right leg, and then begin to hug the left leg into your torso. This might be enough. If this creates enough pressure, you stay here. Second step is bring the knee towards your left armpit. If that's enough, you stay there. Third step is raise the shin and the foot to point up towards the ceiling. And if you can clasp the foot with your hands, clasp it with your hands. And then you can maybe even gently pull on the foot and the shin to draw this knee closer to the ground as far as it goes. This is called half happy baby pose. I call it inverted dragon as a nice alternative. If this gets too intense, you can release what joint is in pain. You can release the knee and just let it hang. Or you can release the thigh to release this joint here. Otherwise, if regular dragon is fine, continue with regular dragon here. Again, you're staying here in stillness so that you can keep track of not only your physical sensations, but your breath. Your breath is often telling you the state of things in your being, your brain, your mind, your thoughts. So we're here for about another minute, either in dragon or an upside down dragon here. And so it's time to bring up this idea of what's known as the three attitudes. And the three attitudes are basically the philosophy, underlying fundamental philosophy that often colors one's thoughts. And you can lump them into three kind of oversimplified categories. but they are kind of the root attitude of how our thoughts work. And indeed, they blossom from thoughts into ideas, and then into beliefs, and into whole philosophies that shape the culture and the social landscape around us. The three attitudes are these. So it's nice to just take an objective kind of Hawk's view of these attitudes. The first one is known as rejection. The second one is correction. And the third one is affirmation. We can take these attitudes in a very simple form. Even on our mats here, when we're practicing yoga, our thoughts are transferring from one to another. We're on with this side of dragon. So when you're ready, plant your hands, tuck the back toe, lift the back knee. See if you can press yourself gently backing up into a downward facing dog here. So this is a yang posture. This is a half arm balance downward facing dog. So it's very yang-like, and it's nice to do after long yin posture. Maybe you can take your dog for a walk. Maybe you can do three-legged dog to work out the stagnation, that first side of dragon. Whatever you'd like to do, and you can also just skip downward facing dog. Maybe do a few cats and cows here to work out some kinks, and then just set up for the other side of dragon when you're ready. So you'll come back to hands and knees, and now it's the right foot that moves up and inch the left knee back. So come into this low lunge with the right leg forward, left leg back, hands on the ground, and then decide if you need props here. Maybe that back knee needs a little bit of help, or maybe the front hands do. Or maybe upside down dragon is better. Or maybe a deeper version of dragon. You can always come into high flying dragon or low flying dragon. So find your version. And again, you're moving by feel. Remind yourself you're moving by feel. Find your specific shape for your body. And then begin to settle here. Soften your breath. Check in with your being. So check in with your physical sensations, but also your mental sensations. And notice what kind of attitude that your thoughts are taking. So the first attitude is known as rejection. And these attitudes are meant to just reflect our philosophy about life, about existence, about suffering, as we journey through life here. And rejection just simply means that we've decided that life is awful, life is horrible, life is terrible. The universe is a horrible, awful, terrible place. And the best that you can do is to get out or escape this horrible existence here. That's basically rejection. And a lot of the deep philosophy that traditionally was developed in the East takes the philosophy of rejection, i.e. the deep profound wisdom and writings of the East are basically saying we need to find a way to get out from all of this suffering. I'll just allude to the fact that classical yoga was actually developed from this type of thinking. The development of deep meditation, basically. It's like let's avoid suffering by finding these deep states of meditation and of a samadhi, so that we can just not be here, be somewhere else, be in some deeper level of consciousness here. It's all about rejection here. Maybe we're rejecting dragon at the moment, and it's like, dragon is awful, it's a horrible, it's a terrible pose, and I want to do something, right? I want to just go away. My brain just wants to leave my body when I'm practicing it. And that's a sign of rejection here. So about 5 more breaths here on this side of dragon, if it's appropriate here. Second attitude is known as correction. And I like to think of correction as kind of similar to rejection, but with a twist. So in correction, we believe that existence, that life is awful, is horrible. It's evil. It's evil, and it's our fault that it's evil. And so we need to do something about it. We need to fix it. We need to correct it. Thus the name correction. This is the overarching philosophy of Western culture. So basically our culture. And since Western culture has more or less taken over the entire world, it colors the philosophy of pretty much global culture. It's like, yes, life existence is bad. It's our fault. We need to do something about it. We need to fix it. Of course, we have a hard time agreeing on just how to fix it. That's kind of where the struggle comes in. But we need to fix dragon pose. We've been here a good long time, so we'll slowly come out of dragon pose. So tuck the back toe, lift the back knee, press both hands into the ground. You can press yourself up into downward facing dog, or if you're not liking downward facing dog, come into some other pose. But sometimes downward facing dog feels really darn good after a long hold in dragon pose. So you can walk the heels out. Maybe bring your dog to stillness, and just maybe for 3 or 4 breaths here. Root your hands into the ground, root your feet into the ground, bring your spine nice and long. Your muscles are toning here in this yang posture. For a couple more breaths here or so. And then when you're ready, bring yourself down onto hands and knees. You do a little bit more fidgeting and working out the stagnation. The next yin posture is known as square pose, and there'll be some alternatives for this pose here. So for square, you might actually want to come and sit with legs out in front, sitting up on some height. Now I actually end up not really liking to sit up on height when I get into square. I'm just kind of demonstrating here what you can do if you don't like the height. Again, you can just sit legs out in front. So for square pose, watch the demo of square, and if it doesn't work for you, the alternative will be eye of the needle pose. So I'll demonstrate that after I get into square. So for square, bend the left knee, bring the left shin crossways in front of you, like so. So if your mat is angled this way, it's kind of bring it parallel to the side of the mat. Bend the right knee. See if you can stack the right shin on top of the left shin. So you're kind of putting your foot, your ankle somewhere on the left, kind of on the left knee or the left thigh here. This might be what your square looks like. Maybe it looks like this. Again, it's not what it looks like or what it feels like. So if there's pain being generated somewhere here, then you'll have to change the details of square. Maybe bring the heels in a little bit closer to your hips. Or maybe you need some padding under a floating knee to make it feel stable. If it's this knee, it's under that knee. Maybe it's this knee that needs the padding. So you can put the padding there. Maybe you need padding under both knees. So maybe 2 pillows is a good idea. Maybe none of this is working. This is a really painful here. So you can try shoelace, which is a modified form. So for shoelace, bring this bottom knee in and the top knee on top of the bottom knee. So this is another modification you can do for square. If that doesn't work either, then you can try eye of the needle. And so for eye of the needle, you'll make your way onto your back. Bend both knees, feet on the floor. Take the right leg, bend the right knee, bring the right ankle on top of the left thigh here. This is stage number 1 for eye of the needle. Stage number 2 is bring this left thigh in as far as it goes until it stops here, or until you're feeling some pressure. So that's a good alternative for square, because square simply doesn't work for some of us. It depends on the intimate nature of how your hip bones and hip ligaments are built. So Square. Oh, by the way, if you have hip replacement, square is maybe not such a great idea. Or shoelace here. So you'll just have to move and see how this feels here. A couple more minutes in square. If you're in square and you would like to go a little bit deeper, maybe you're not feeling much here, you can add a forward fold. So go up tall through your torso and then hinge yourself forward and then soften your torso until it stops. So let your spine round here in a forward fold here. It can hang if hanging is okay. If hanging is not okay, then maybe find some props to rest your torso on here. Maybe find some props to rest your head on if your head and your neck are what's creating too much strain here. So we'll just stay here in square for about one final minute here. We'll get back to the three attitudes. So the third attitude is the attitude of called affirmation. That's the attitude of the existence and life in the universe is actually okay. We'll just accept it and allow it as it is in the present moment. This is what's adopted by primal cultures. Primal being just primitive cultures where the universe is just so expansive and unknown that it's best just to accept everything as it is. And some Buddhist philosophy and some yoga philosophies that come out of India, other types of yoga philosophies take the philosophy of acceptance. It's like the existence, life, the universe, it's fine, it's okay. There is nothing wrong with it. And so just adopt the attitude to accept what is here. So a few more breaths here. Are you taking an attitude of affirmation with this pose? Or maybe you're taking an attitude of rejection. Or maybe you're deciding there's something that you can fix about this pose. That's an attitude of correction. Whatever is the case, the attitude right now is an attitude of correction. And the correction is come out of the pose. Maybe lean back and release the legs here. So after a hip opener like square, I like to do windshield wiper pose. And so windshield wiper pose is bend both knees, feet on the floor, feet pretty wide, hands behind your torso, and then gently sway the knees to one side, slowly bring them back up to center, sway them to the other side. Do this for a few cycles to release and loosen up the hip sockets. And then when you're ready, we'll try the other side of square pose. So legs start out in front. Again, maybe height was helpful, so you can sit on a little bit of height here. Now it's the right leg that's on the bottom. So the right knee bend, right shin is perpendicular to your line of sight. And then bend the left knee, see if you can stack both hips. This doesn't have to look pretty. It has to not be injurious here. So you can bring your heels in, you can go into shoelace pose, you can do eye of the needle. If you go into eye of the needle, then it's the left ankle on the right thigh this time. So find your version for this so that you don't have to take an attitude of rejection. You can actually say, okay, I affirm that I'm going to stay a while, but it takes a little bit of correction to do this here. Notice the dynamic flow of those profound attitudes in a single idea of just getting into a posture. You can just stay here and marinate through the hips, but if you want a little bit more, you can fold forward any amount until you've found a place where things start to stop here. So rejection, correction, and affirmation. The interesting thing is the philosophies behind our cultures often are flavored by these attitudes. All you have to do is think about social systems, cultural systems, political systems, and religious systems. And you see that often one is dominated by one of these kinds of attitudes. Now, we humans are way more dynamic than a social philosophy. And it is actually appropriate as we think, as we move, as we navigate and manage our lives to maybe use all three. In fact, it's possible to have a single thought that has the attributes of rejection and correction and affirmation all there together here. So we're here for about another minute or so. And so maybe notice the flavors of your thoughts and notice that they might actually wander. I've often noticed that I have an attitude of rejection with a lovely, compassionate wrapper of affirmation around it. So it feels lovely, it feels good, but at the base and the core is one of rejection, of outright rejection. I grew up in Western culture, so I grew up in the culture of correction, where things seem to always be not quite right. They could always be a little bit better, and always thinking about ways, how can we make them better? In other words, how can we correct them or fix them? And that's all part of this jumbled mental process that's going up here, even though we might be kind of really quiet here in this yin posture. So just a couple more breaths here. Maybe sink and settle in this square pose one last time. Notice the physical sensations. Come back to what your body is telling you. Then at some point you can slowly come out. So plant your hands, use your hands and your arms to bring yourself all the way up. Slowly undo your version of square pose, or eye of the needle, or shoelace. You can extend your legs and just move your legs and feet around a bit. You can try windshield wipers again. Just nod the knees back and forth a few times. And then we'll set up for the next yin posture. This next yin posture is a supported bridge pose that I have come to call Milky Way Pose, because you're creating a giant arch with your body, much like the arch of stars that graces the night sky when it's clear and dark. And you'll need some props for this, so I'll use some books. By the way, if you do have yoga blocks, you can always use yoga blocks for this posture. I'm just trying to think of common household items that people might have if you don't have these luxurious yoga props here. So bring your height. In this case, I'm using these books. Have them at the ready. Bend both knees, put your feet on the floor. And then what you'll do is root through your feet and your shoulders. Lift your hips up to put some height underneath your hips. And you might have to adjust how much height you put under. So I've got 3 books here. Maybe you need 5 books, or maybe you just want 1 book here. You can also substitute a couch cushion or blanket roll or a couple of pillows if you want something a little bit softer. You're placing your height prop underneath the back of your pelvic bone, so your sacrum here. So above your glutes, but below your lumbar spine, the bendy part of your spine, the plate where it's nice, flat, and solid feeling, just to generate height at the hip level. Notice you're already in a back bend here, your upper torso. Head, neck, shoulders, comfortable here. Now, for some of us, we might want to keep the knees bent, feet on the floor. But if you can, you experiment with extending one leg out, maybe both legs out. Notice how the traction is generated. So we're creating this long line of traction running through the front side of the body, and maybe it gets pretty intense here in through the hips. So see how that feels. And you might decide you need to adjust the height here. You might decide that maybe you need to bend your knees. Maybe nothing about this posture works for you. This is technically a back bend. So if you're wanting to do a back bend here, Then do Sphinx pose. Bring yourself onto your belly. Bring your elbows underneath your shoulders. Relax your torso here. Otherwise, here in Milky Way Pose, just soften and relax here. For a few more minutes, we'll go a little bit longer. So I'm thinking instead of the 3.5 minutes, we may actually linger here for about 4 minutes or so. Once you've set up, you really are using your props in the floor for complete support. So if you're not in pain, if this is an acceptable place to be, all you have to do is stay here. Notice we're making a back bend here of the entire body, which counteracts the slight forward bend that we're all in when we're sitting in chairs for long periods of time. This is why this posture can be particularly restorative and therapeutic, to just counteract long periods of a slight forward fold. So one way that we can actually use these three attitudes, remember, none of these attitudes are right or wrong, good or bad. We have to kind of release those definitions and just treat these objectively. It's like sometimes our thoughts are colored by an attitude of rejection. It seems that way, or correction, or affirmation. In fact, since most of us live in cultures that are usually mostly colored by rejection and correction, usually correction, this idea of affirmation is very unappealing to us, to just accept things as they are. Right away we realize that we run into trouble with this idea because we see all the pain and the suffering in the world and we say, yeah, there is no way I'm ever going to accept or affirm that stuff. How can I? And that's just reminding oneself that one didn't grow up in that kind of a culture. We grew up in a culture of, well, most of us, correction. So it's like, no, the world is wrong and awful and I'm going to fix it kind of attitude, right? We fight over just how to fix it. In fact, we almost kill each other over exactly how to fix it, but that's our attitude. It's like we disagree very deeply on how to fix things, and that usually causes a lot of pain and suffering in and of itself. That's kind of the weakness to correction. But as humans, our depth of thought can use all three very effectively. I like to use the example of a traumatic experience. In order to heal from the trauma and the hurt of that experience, we can usefully use all three. So a basic example is you may want to start out with this idea of rejection. You use the attitude of rejection to remove the external sources of the pain and of the suffering. This is appropriate. And then as you move on with your healing, you move into a phase of correction. You contemplate, you look back on, well, how can I live my life, move through this existence? What kind of corrections do I have to make so that I can live a better life? And then at some point, to complete the healing, you have to drop the ideas of rejection and correction and begin to cultivate these ideas of allowing and acceptance and affirmation. That in the end, even with all the pain and suffering, life is okay. Existence is okay. We're here. We're alive. We're experiencing sensation. We're experiencing consciousness. And kind of just de-stress a bit. You give yourself a chance to let this be a moment that's okay. Accept and allow this moment. This is the properties of yin yoga, to get through these long-held postures here. So we've been here long enough in this bridge pose to slowly come out, slowly bend your knees, put your feet back on the ground if you had your legs straight here. Slowly root through your feet and your shoulders. Engage enough muscles to lift your hips up so that you can take your hands and start removing props, your height, out from underneath your hip. And then when you have it all removed, slowly bring your hips back down onto the floor here. Maybe stay here for a while. Just reverberate. Notice what has happened here. A thing you can do is maybe bring your feet away from each other. So find the right edge of the yoga mat with your right foot, left edge of the yoga mat with your left foot. Allow your knees to fall together if they do that. I'm not very well internally rotated, so my knees have a hard time doing that. But if you are, your knees can do that here. And just stay there for a few breaths. At some point, bring your feet back together and then draw your knees into your torso slowly, because this is a forward fold. This is a direct counter pose to the back bend that we just did. If you want to, your hands can cup your knees and you can draw your knees in. You can feel your lumbar lengthening along the floor. You can gently rock your knees from side to side. Before our final resting pose, we'll do just one final twist here. So with your knees together in towards your torso, lower your both knees over to your right side. You can use your right hand to guide them. And then left arm comes out into a T or cactus arm position, and you're melting your upper body back towards the left so that you are in a spinal twist. And if it's okay with your head and your neck, you can turn and gaze over your left arm, left hand here. Just for a couple of breaths here. And then on your next inhale and bring both of those knees back up. Bring yourself back to center, and then we're going over to the other side. So slowly lower both knees over to the left. Right shoulder tries to melt back towards the ground as you lengthen your right arm out, and if it's okay with your head and your neck, you can gaze over that right hand here. And just feel the twist in that torso here. Soften one or two more breaths here. And on your next inhale and bring your knees back up together. And maybe give your knees one final hug. Any final last movements or motions you'd like to make before you find your final resting pose of practice. Again, it can be this traditional shavasana, this traditional corpse pose of just lying on your back, arms and legs extended. If this is acceptable for you, by the way, if you have pillows handy, pillows are just a really, really nice thing to just place underneath your head here. Maybe there's strain in your low back. If you have a second pillow, try bending your knees and just stuffing that second pillow underneath your knees, so that they can be soft, and maybe that eases some strain out of your hips and your low back. So this is just a wonderful kind of adjustment for this final pose. And then go through, this is the ultimate in posture. So you're going through and softening your entire being here. And you can maybe start with your toes, so release and relax your toes. Soften your feet, bottoms and tops of your feet. Soften your ankles and heels. Release your shins, the fronts of your shins, the backs of your calves. Soften your knees. Relax your thighs. Soften up through your hips, the back of your spine, the front of your abdomen. Continue to just soften up through your torso, through your rib cage here. Collarbones are wide. Shoulders are released and relaxed. Arms are extended. Maybe hands are far enough away from your side so that your arms, your hands can roll up and face up towards the ceiling, and then fingers are released here. Maybe pause here and just notice the tips of your fingers. See if you can feel the tip of each individual finger on each hand. Maybe you can even notice a sense of energy or tingling in the tips of your fingers. Arms to continue to soften. Begin to soften up through your neck and through your head. So release your jaw, relax your tongue, soften the inside of your mouth. Soften your forehead. Soften the eye sockets. Soften the skin around your ears. Soften your brain. And begin to notice. Notice this effortless state of being. Notice that even in this stillness, thoughts continue. Maybe notice the nature of your thoughts, and maybe notice the attitudes that are attached to each thought. This is an interesting exercise to do when it's quiet and when it's still, is to watch a thought move through and to notice what attitude is attached to that thought. Maybe it's unclear because maybe there's more than one attitude attached to a single thought. Release, relax, and surrender your body-mind 100%. And continue to be the watcher, to be the metaphorical listener of your breath, the soft inhales, the soft exhales, thoughts, and the external universe around you as you simply exist for a few more breaths here. At some point, bring your awareness back into the room. You can deepen your breath. You can make little movements with fingers, with toes. Expand that motion, wrists and into ankles. Make gentle motion with your whole body. At some point, gently extend your arms up above, behind you. Lengthen your arms out and press your heels towards the wall in front of you. Maybe just do a nice, gentle, full body stretch here. And then release. Gently bend your knees, roll over slowly onto one side, and stay there long enough to give yourself a big thank you for your practice, but also a big thank you for you. Your unique manifestation in this universe. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And then when you're feeling ready, gently bring yourself up into a comfortable seat. When you get there, spend some time to find a good seat. Feel the stability of the ground underneath you. Grow your spine long, bring your hands together in front of heart center. I'll end practice with one Om. You can either join in or just simply listen to my voice. The inner light in me honors the inner light in you. Namaste.